Good morning, Grant Wiley here from Worthington Publishing, here with another game review in Grant's Game Room. I know on the video I posted on Monday, I said that we were going to be reviewing Grant's Gamble in our American Civil War series. A little bit of a change. I've decided to go start at the newest and work my way backwards through these Civil War games. We'll maybe do those over the next month, one a week, something like that. So we're going to start today with Pemberton and Grant. Myself and my uncle, Mike Wiley, we designed Grant's Gamble, Lee's Invincibles, Jackson, and Sheridan. And we published those, I think, 2014, 2015. Sean Chick, noted historian and author and veteran board gamer, designed Pemberton and Grant on Vicksburg. And this was a little bit of a uptick for us in components, and I'm going to explain a little bit about that. But before I do that, a little bit of housekeeping. Guys, if you're enjoying these videos, please go below, click the subscribe and notification button. You'll be notified when we post a new video, whether it's an update, a review, or just what's going on in the gaming world. I will tell you we have the Military Aviation Museum here in Virginia Beach. They are doing a World War I weekend with live flights. They do reenactments, and we have one of the largest flying military history museums here. We've got World War I fighters, and I'm talking Fokkers, you know, D7s. I'm talking, I'm trying to think of some of the others they got. They've got a whole number. They've got a P-51 from World War II. They've got a number of planes. So maybe one day what I'll do is I'll do a vlog from out there and give y'all an hour-long tour of the museum. It's really an awesome museum. They're doing that World War I weekend, and I think that may be coming up, and if so, I'll do some live posts from there. But first, we're going to talk about Pemberton and Grant by Sean Chick. What you get with this is a beautiful box. It's volume 4 in our Civil War series. We do currently have a deal going. You can get our first 3 games for $150, so $50 a game. Is really a great deal. It's a retail of around $195. You throw this in, and you've got yourself the East and West in the Civil War. It's a beautiful, nice, sturdy box. Good box. Our previous 3 games came in boxes that weren't like this. They had a slip cover over them. So if you order those 3 games, you're going to get the slip covers, which are still great boxes. If you buy Columbia, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We've done them in the past. But anyway, this is Pemberton and Grant, and I'm going to go through what you get in the box. You get a sheet of labels. Now, you're going to notice something. These are nice gloss labels. You get the leaders, 2 different style of leaders. You either get a picture or the star. You can use whichever one you want. You're under 30 blocks aside on this, and I can tell you there's very few on the board. You get Pemberton's Army in gray, Johnson's Relief Army in brown. You get trench markers, VP markers, and what are called caps, command action point markers, to keep track of how many command action points you get in the game. Limited cavalry in this, no artillery, and I'm going to show you the pieces and we'll go through it. You get an 8-page series rule book, and 8 pages include the cover, a back page full color graphic, and really components. So you're at about 4.5 pages of rules here for a block game. And then all of this page is designer notes. Designer notes and questions that we've been asked that we answered in the series. So you get Grant's Gamble, Jackson and Sheridan, Lee's Invincible, Pemberton and Grant. Jackson and Sheridan's a lot of fun because you get the 1862 and 64 campaign. I'll do a full review on that because I am a huge Stonewall Jackson fan. I grew up here in Virginia, so Lee and Jackson were my boyhood idols. I know times have changed, and you know, I don't know what your feelings are on that, but I don't judge people from history based on current standards. You get nice dark gray blocks and good dark blue blocks. They really pop out. The counters, I've got some of them labeled up here, and I'll go through these when I set them up. Not only do you get the probably 4 pages of base rules. For each game, you get a 4-page series specific rules. And in this, you get a detailed graphic setup, you get a written setup, and some optional rules, and basically 2 pages of rules. Guys, this is not an overwhelming game. It's probably a 3 on a scale of 1 to 10. I've told you before in my videos, I like baked-in history. We've tried to do that in this series. I think it's an exceptional series. I always wanted to do these games. Again, growing up here in Virginia, I've been to all the Eastern Civil War battlefields, and I can tell you every summer I'd re-hit them. I was in Gettysburg last year. I do the Peninsula Campaign up through Richmond, Petersburg, all that every year. But I'll go through some of the detailed rules here on this, the victory conditions, the replacements, and supply line. The board here is a beautiful, and I will say Sean, our graphic artist, did a great job on this, Mississippi with the Mississippi River, Vicksburg, the rail lines, the towns. This is a point-to-point movement game, so you're moving your blocks from point to point on the board. We've got the turn track on the board. We've got optional units on the board. We've got your reinforcement units on the board, as well as your weather. So anything pertinent, you're not flipping through outside charts to hunt for stuff here. It's here. You also get a battle board in the game, which is jammed in the rules here. I'll break that out here in a minute. But it's your standard 3-column battle board, right, left, center, forward, back, and reserve. Vicksburg here is a fortress city. It can aid in the defense of a certain number of units. You've got ports that are important for supply for the Union Army, and victory point locations here that are critical. As opposed to what Sean Chick did here that was really cool, as opposed to what you would think, it's not just about driving at Vicksburg. You can win the game by surrounding Vicksburg, these 3 locations, cutting it off supply, or capturing Jackson. So, you're cutting the supply here. You can see the rail line running from Jackson to the west to Vicksburg. You cut that supply line, and the Confederacy is going to lose Vicksburg. We all know, if you're a student of history, you know what a critical campaign this was to the American Civil War, that it just gave the Union the use of the Mississippi River from St. Louis, Cairo, all the way down to New Orleans. It really, at that point, you were heading into the end of the war with what happened at Gettysburg and here. I'm going to flip around to the other side of the camera. I'm going to show you a little bit about gameplay. Again, this isn't a terribly long video because the game's fairly simple, fairly straightforward. If you've played block games before, you're pretty much going to have an idea on how this works. It's just mechanically the tricks that are involved that I think you'll dig. Okay, what we show here is the opening setup for Vicksburg. First, a little bit of explanation on the pieces. This is coming off the reinforcement track. This is the Union 15th Corps. Most pieces in the game are corps level, which means that you have very few pieces on the board. Now, the 15th Corps can take 12 hits. What happens is during combat, when a unit is hit, it's rotated to the next lower number. When it receives replacements, of course, it's rotated higher. On the left in the star is the unit's morale. On the right in the circle is how many die this piece rolls in combat. So the 15th Corps can take 12 hits. At this level, it rolls 4 dice, and in combat, a 5 is its morale. Now I'm going to show you the replacement piece, because after it gets reduced, it now goes to this block. And this block is placed on the board, and the other is taken off. Again, morale still 5, strength 4. However, with many pieces, as the strength goes down, this is the next step block down for the 15th Corps. You can see its morale is now a 4, and it's still now rolls 3 dice in combat. So units lose some of their capability as they go down in combat, particularly the lower they go. Units in the game are primarily infantry corps. There are leaders, General Johnson, there's his lovely mug, and cavalry. Cavalry work a bit different. They, in most games, do not have a combat factor. This is actually what's called its screening factor. So when this cavalry piece is on the board, and we'll put it here in Willow Springs, zoom in some. So he's there in Willow Springs. Let's zoom in. There we go. And his screening factor is a 3. Now, when a Union piece attempts to move through that location, they have to roll a die. And on a die of 1 through 3, the Union piece has to stop there and can move no further that turn. The cavalry backs up 1 space. If the Confederate player had rolled a 4 or higher for the screening result, it would have meant the cavalry would have retreated 3 spaces. And the Union force could have kept moving. So cavalry acts as it did historically in the campaigns, mainly to screen. Now, speaking on Vicksburg, you can see the Union Army starts with only 3 pieces on the board. Grant, the 13th Corps, let's get him in focus, with a strength of 10, and a cavalry piece with a screening value of 2. Most of the American Civil War series by us are low-density units. These battles can be fought in an hour and a half or 2, particularly for the Jackson and Sheridan module, because they were smaller campaigns. Now, movement is point to point. You can see you can move along roads and along the rail line between Vicksburg here and Jackson over here on the side of the board, off where my hand is pointed. Victory for the Union player is controlling Vicksburg and Jackson at the same time. If they do that, they win automatically. For the Confederate, it's eliminating 2 corps or 4 blocks. The Confederates win automatically. If they can eliminate 4 Union blocks or 2 corps of the Union, they win automatically. If neither of those factors occur, the Union wins by having a positive victory value and Vicksburg surrounded, which means they would control Chickasaw Bluffs, Mount Auburn, and Warrenton, which is just south of Vicksburg. So if the Union can control these 3 locations and have a positive victory point value, and you receive victory points for controlling the starred locations, then they win the game. The Union also spends victory points to bring in reinforcements and things of that nature. Supply is not deadly critical in these campaigns because we're looking at 30 to 60 day time periods in these, so you're not talking about months and months without supply. Each side receives a number of command action points. For the Union, it is 3. For the Confederate, it is 2. Each command action point allows you to activate a unit. Now, each commander is rated for how, I guess, good they were historically. So at the start of the Confederate turn here, they get 2 cap. Pemberton's command rating is a 9. So on 2 dice, I'd have to roll a 9 or more, and if I did, I would receive 1 extra cap. Grant's command rating is a 7. In the different games, different commanders are rated differently. Like in Lee's Invincibles, Lee is a 7. Hooker's a 9, I believe, while Meade's an 8 or a 7. You know, Jackson is rated definitely higher than some of the Union commanders. And Jackson and Sheridan, I believe you're actually rolling for Lincoln because he was coordinating the Union forces. But here at Vicksburg, it's Grant against Pemberton and Johnson. When Johnson comes on board based on a reinforcement roll, his command rating is also 9. So you roll twice for the Confederate. If Johnson gets it or Pemberton gets the extra command action point, it has to be spent on units in their particular army. And in Johnson's case, his units are in brown. Where is it at? There we go. And Pemberton's Confederates are mainly in the gray tone. The Mississippi River, key to the Confederacy Western Front really during that time period. It was important to Jefferson Davis to hold it. So this campaign was really a critical one during the war, especially since it happened at the same time as Gettysburg. It was a real blow to the Confederacy when Vicksburg fell. Now, with that being said, go into a little bit of gameplay. Like I said, it's a 20-turn long game. The Union's trying to surround Vicksburg, not necessarily capture it, although if they capture it, it's they can win an automatic victory if they occupy that and Jackson out here on the right at the same time. There's different options for the Union and the Confederate player. If the Confederate player holds a box down here called Port Hudson, on turn 4 they've got to make a decision whether they're going to try and hold on to Port Hudson or surrender it to the Union, which has implications as far as reinforcements. So there's some critical decision points for a game here that only has really 4 to 6 pages of rules. You get a lot of key decisions. Weather plays a part. The weather track here, if it rains, you lose a movement. If it rains 2 turns, you lose 2 movement. Infantry can move 3 locations in a turn. Garrisons can move 2. And cavalry can move 4 locations in a turn, and they can really fly. Leaders and cavalry do not cost you a command action point to activate for movement if they are in a location or connected to a location via road or railroad with an infantry piece that's activated. So for one activation point here, I could activate all 3 of those pieces to move and or have combat. Leaders and cavalry can't move into a location with only enemy units present. You have to have a friendly unit present. So in a situation like this, I'd spend 1 command action point. I'd put the Union cavalry out here on the flank to prevent the Confederates from coming across the river and surprising me, because there is a defensive bonus in combat for fighting behind a river, as well as in Vicksburg, as well as with trenches. I'm not getting into specific details in the rules about how combat goes. It's a pretty standard block thing. We have a battle line here. You have a reserve. As units take hits, they got to check their morale. So for this corps here, if he were in a battle and took a hit, his morale is let's get him zoomed in, a 5. I figured the trick here. If this hand's there, it blurs. His morale is a 5. So if he takes a hit and is reduced to a 9, at the end of that round, you would roll. On a 1 through 5, he's fine. He doesn't retreat. On a 6, he would retreat back to reserve. Now, if he was the only piece in his side's line position, and you can see it's an attacker line and a defender line position there, then the opposing player would get a pursuit roll, and that's equal to 1 full roll, combat roll against him. If he voluntarily retreats, say he's taken a hit but didn't lose morale but wants to back out, he could voluntarily retreat, which only allows the defender 1 die per unit, not 3 dice or 4 dice, whatever each of the units are rated for. That's just a brief overview of the system here for Vicksburg. This is really a nice game designed by Sean Chick. I had to take yesterday off, and I was so you're gonna see me in 2 different sets of clothes here for this video. But surprisingly, Marco, any of you that know Marco Ornato from Marco Wargamer Reviews,
He did one yesterday on Vicksburg too, so you can check that out. I shared that on Twitter. So that kind of shuts this one down. I'm going to jump around to the other side of the camera and give you a closing thought or two, and that's it for today.
So that concludes today's review on Pemberton and Grant. Just to give you a little bit of gameplay. As I said, this is probably my favorite of the series, just because growing up here on the Eastern Theater of the American Civil War, I've seen the battlefields. I've never been out west. Guys, if you get a chance, pick this up. We've got it for special on our website. Buy the first 3, $150, and then you can pick this one up, I think, $65. You may be able to find it cheaper on Amazon. I don't know. I haven't shopped around here for our own games in a bit. Chattanooga will be next, or Atlanta. Atlanta's been designed by me, and Chattanooga is Sean Chick. And we're also working on something special for the Eastern Theater. So with that being said, as always, happy gaming, and see you next time.